Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and back in the studio, and very excited to be with my brother, Austin Douglas. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh, fantastic. Hello, everybody.
Good. Glad to have you back, sir. And this week we are going to talk to you guys a little bit about Austin, small update to his cancer journey that he's battling through right now, as well as some different mindset topics that he's wanted to address with everyone, and something we've both been focusing on a lot that we felt we wanted to dive further into. It'll probably go beyond just the reaches of this episode, turn into a little series in and of itself. But as I said in some of my social channels earlier this week, we want to make sure we're taking some time to strip back everything we're doing and show you the why and the how behind everything. Because we get so busy in the day-to-day operations of what we're doing here that I think from a far glance it can just look like we're just cruising through every day without facing challenges, without facing problems, and things are just happening. Right. And while we would love to say that was the case, you know, in every life there is challenge, there's hardship. We both have health challenges we're battling constantly all the time that affect everything we're doing. And really, at the end of the day, everything comes down to the message that's in your brain. And many of these core different factors that are a part of this Be Impossible message. So I'm going to give things over to Austin now to let him explain where his situation stands and give a brief intro to what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, so just for the quick update, try to make it quick. So June, the last week of June, I had a 6 month checkup for my tie-in down in Houston. And normally for a checkup like this, we would have had the PET scan, and that would have been my first PET scan following the initial exit PET scan from treatment. And that was not the case this time. About 3 to 3.5 months in is where I had found a lymph node again above my right clavicle that had not swollen up, but certainly was something that was rock hard. And that caught me off guard, obviously, coming off of a pretty intense, but also slightly experimental treatment that I had done down in Houston. And so this timing comes around 6 months. Already wanted to have scans done, but especially in this case, we needed them done. And so I go in for the PET scan, and the scan itself went fine. It went by smooth. I was put into yet another new machine at the Cleveland Clinic. So I had an hour wait with the radioactive glucose coursing through my veins, as always, but the image itself, the machine, the image just had taken, it was like 6 or 7 minutes, and I was done.
That's insane to me. Back in my day, they were like 45 minutes to 90 minutes, like every time.
Yep.
I'd be interested to hear for any of our listeners who've had PET scans before, what's your like record quickest time for a PET scan? Because I've got to imagine 6 to 7 minutes is impossible to beat.
Yeah, it was profound. I went back in, back or out, and then back in, and then it was just image time, and then done. It was just like clockwork, and they knew they had that. They knew they had that luxury because I was in there and out within 8 or 9 minutes just for set up, lay down, all that stuff, and they were like, all right. We got another person coming in. If you could take your gatherings to another room here to get dressed and everything. I was just like, all right. I'll get out of here. sorry I'm in your hair. And yeah. So they knew darn well what they had. And so I had the PET scan done. And post PET scan this time was actually didn't run into any issues. A couple of the PET scans there actually, like as soon as I was done with the scan, I would just have this rushing, throbbing headache, and I never understood why. I mean, I know you have to fast the day of, or at least 6 hours before, but then it's low carb for the previous day for it, 24 hours prior. And that's all fine and dandy, but sometimes, in these cases here, I just put it to having a lack of macronutrients. But in this case here, everything went fine. I came out fine, and the rest of the day was wonderful. I got my sushi, so that's nice. And so then the following day is when I got to see Dr. Winter, and unfortunately, radiology had not gone through and had given their interpretation and had let go of the data, the information for like SUV and the different locations and their interpretation of it. And so we weren't really, we didn't have too much to talk about other than we did have the images, so that was nice. The image itself of my right clavicle did show a bright spot. So my PET scan back in April had shown not a whole lot due to a lot of brown fat in the right and left neck portions, had basically obscured anything that could have shown up, and we don't know why, but it just happened. So this scan here, we were hoping that wouldn't happen, and it didn't. So we discussed the node itself, and that was the only spot that was nice. The right axillary, right armpit, there was nothing at all. No signs of anything there, which is nice because that were one of the two places that my relapse had sprouted, and so a little bit of concern. You don't want to see that. Of course you don't, but it's okay. It wasn't. After seeing quite a few PET scan images over the past 2 years, or 2+ years now, oh God, it certainly wasn't the brightest indication on an image that I've seen so far. So we talked about it, and we did get a measurement from the image itself. She with the type of software that they have, that she can draw lines within the images themselves, of course, because there's still data there. It's just not radiologist emitted. But we looked, and it was 0.3-ish centimeters, which is still fairly small. So what she had done and what we had decided to do was to send a request to interventional radiology to say, hey, we would like to do a biopsy on this node, without having all the SUVs and that stuff. And so we sent that in, and this was a Thursday. So she said, obviously sometime next week we'll definitely have an answer, and if they want to do the biopsy, that tells us that they do feel that it is necessary, or if they don't want to, then maybe we can take that as a good sign for now. And they came back, and the SUV was a rating of, or a score of 5, I suppose. And what they do is they take your liver SUV and they match that up to any abnormalities in the rest of your body to use that as a guide. And my liver had scored a 2.8 in that scan, which is fairly low. Typically I'm 3.4 to 3.8, and it was 2.8 this time, which was interesting. But so and then the node itself was 5, but it had read 3.8 in April and a 5 in June. I mean, almost 2.5 months apart. So, how do we interpret that? Like, what is causing that? Is kind of the biggest questions that we're coming out with this. Is because one, it's the radiologist did determine that it's 0.4 centimeters in diameter, which is again small. 2, it hasn't grown in size. At least the node that I can feel, which we assume is the node that is under discretion here, it's just not getting bigger, which it should be. If it was cancer, it certainly should have gotten much bigger, as you've described as well. And for the SUV to grow, to increase that in that small portion over 2.5 months is still just a bit strange because of my SUVs in the past were already aggressive for the original diagnosis, and then they were obviously doubled, if not 2.5 times higher on my relapse, in a very short amount of time as well, because my relapse had occurred within the first year of being declared into remission, which is a bit aggressive, very aggressive for my particular type of cancer. And so still some questions, obviously, because we don't know what it is. And interventional radiology had decided that with the size of it being so small, that they said that they wouldn't be able to collect enough cells from the node itself to put it under the microscope and tell us what it is. So it is either the node continues to grow, which we hope it doesn't, and then we can get a biopsy done, or we continue to do PET scans. I continue to be injected with radioactive glucose and continue to monitor it, and hopefully that it's some abnormality that is not cancer. That'd be nice, and go from there. So we have a PET scan scheduled for late August. It'll actually be the week before the powerlifting meet. So
Parkersburg half.
And the Parkersburg half. Yeah. Can't wait for that cold day. So yeah. And yeah, it's going to be a busy couple of last weeks for August, for me at least. So, but yeah, that's where we're at right now. So unfortunately not coming with a whole lot of answers, but still just, collecting good data, watching it, doing the best that we can do, and adapting to the situation as best we can.
Yeah. Well, that's what's always amazing to me is I've never seen a situation like there's a lot of situations out there where there's a lot of unknown with cancers, and we don't always know what's the best thing to do, what's the best approach to take. But you're probably the first situation I've seen where time and time and time again, it's just like we have no clue what's going on. Like we don't know if there's cancer in your body or not. And that keeps happening.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a difficult thing to work through, because kind of like we talked about on the last episode we discussed together with the Schrodinger's cat situation. It's like, at least if you got a for sure answer one way or the other, then you could move forward knowing what approach to take. But now it's like you don't know the answer. So how do you formulate an approach? And I think this kind of ties back to what we talked about last time and what we're going to talk about today. How do you go forward with that?
I go forward knowing that, one, I have experience in I have plenty of experience in facing life without cancer, and for the past 2 years and 5 months, I have the experience of battling with not only having cancer, but potentially seeing it come back. And so that's kind of first off, is that I have experience with it. So it's something that's not, if it were to rear its ugly head, I would not, turn the other cheek or how can I say that? The experience certainly gives me a foundation of confidence. I guess that's going to be the best way to put it, because I'm prepared in whatever Dr. Winter were to come to me with, like whatever news that would be. I would have the experience of going, okay, it's cancer. All right. I already know what the next steps are. We've already discussed that. So that's that I guess that would be number 2, but just keeping with the first, it's says it's cancer, okay, we know where to go. If it's not cancer, okay, well, that's great. That's fantastic. I can continue remission this time, which would be phenomenal. So the second thing is, and something that we've repeated on this show is knowledge is power. In my case, and in most of our guests' everybody's case, honestly, is that I know what the next steps are. I've studied, I've read through a lot of information, and I've read through a lot of others' experiences going through the stem cell transplant. And so, like, I'm knowledge-wise, I'm ready for what could come next. Experience-wise, I'm confident to be able to face what comes next. And in all, no matter what direction, no matter what path that I'm put on, because obviously this is not voluntary, whatever path that I'm put on, I know that the community that I'm surrounded by and the friends that I have right beside me, that I don't go into battle alone. And as we've said many a times, that just getting emotional just thinking about it, is, you know, that removes any trace of fear that could be within my mind and within my actions moving forward. So,
so now that you know that we don't know,
yeah,
to put it bluntly, what is your main focus in moving forward through the next steps, through the next process toward finding that answer?
Well, moving forward, you know, day by day is just making sure that I'm in preparations mentally, spiritually, physically, to be able to face whatever can come. You know, that kind of habitual portions of the days that we wrestle with. You know, mentally, I would be looking at keeping up to date with the stem cell treatment, where it's at, seeing if there's anything new that comes up with it, keeping up to date with the Cleveland Clinic, and their facilities with that, I guess would just be more of a broad thing. But also mentally is keeping myself disciplined to not be overcome by anything negative whenever that news would come. Physically is doing what we keep doing. We are both in preparation for a powerlifting meet at the end of August, and so that's going to help out a lot. That will keep me occupied physically and mentally, but obviously mostly physically. Just because it's, you know, powerlifting meet, lifting heavy, not really something that I'd be looking too much forward to in terms of, you know, prep for a marathon. But I haven't gone in for like any type of resistance training that involved heavy weight, going to a max or even getting close to a max. Like, that has not happened since December of 2022. So that's, again, during marathon training, your immediate reaction would be like, oh, you know, that's putting your body through a lot of stress and your CNS through a lot of stress, and you want to kind of keep that for your endurance training. And yes, but at the same time, since it's been so long for myself and going to a max, I think it's going to help me a lot mentally. Yeah. Get my mind off of things.
Yeah. Well, and that former message you mentioned is just, that's what goes through the minds and hearts of people who believe in limitations.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if you tell yourself that constantly, it's going to be true. 100%. And why would you ever hold yourself to something limiting like that without ever having tested it for yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then spiritually, daily meditation, that's been helping out a lot. Daily journaling, especially, and ultimately and this is something that I've picked up here of recent, and it's a practice that I hate admitting this. And I do mean those 4 words. I hate admitting this. But I almost ridiculed the practice of sitting down and writing down and actively thinking about what you are thankful for on a daily basis. It's a practice. It's a practice that certain ideologies are very fond of engaging in. And so since they liked it, I was telling myself that I was not supposed to like that. You know, not everything about those ideologies I thought to myself of being something that I couldn't do. But in this case here, I ridiculed the thought of sitting down and going, "Oh, I'm thankful for this," because I had this ill-worked, and I was in a very distraught place of just assuming that, oh, well, because I love the earth and I love space and all this other stuff, that I of course I'm thankful to be here. Of course I'm thankful for existence, because I have to deal with it every day. You know, when you think about astrophysics, you know, you see beyond what you see here on Earth. You see so much carnage and chaos and unlivable environments everywhere, almost everywhere. Rabbit hole, but almost everywhere but here. So why would I need to write down why I'm thankful when we all should be thankful for just existing? You know, the percentage, and just it goes on and on and on. And I found it to be a very calming practice. I have to admit, it's extremely calming.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like what we talked about yesterday. By putting yourself in a state of gratitude, you by default cannot have a victim mentality. And it's when we talked about that yesterday during the speech at Amputee Fest, you know, it's this idea of, are you the hero or are you the victim of your story? Mm-hmm. So obviously we all want to be the hero of our own story. Nobody, I want to say nobody wants to be the victim. You know, I'm sure there's people out there that love playing that card, but with what we're chasing here, with where our mindset falls, none of our listeners, nobody listening to this show wants to be a victim. Mm-hmm. So what kind of daily practices can you leverage to put yourself in that hero mentality? Because it is easy to fall into it. You know, crappy things happen on a day-to-day basis all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, you make decisions, your life goes in a course that you didn't expect. The rules change, you wake up and the game's different. Whatever it is, it's easy to slip into that mentality of, why is this happening to me? I wish that I hadn't done this. I wish that it hadn't gone this way. You know, why do I have to go through this? And it's as easy it is to slip into that, it's just not productive.
Precisely.
So how do we flip that to, okay, the game's changed, the rules have changed, everything's different. Yeah, maybe this isn't fair. Maybe I don't deserve this, but I'm still going to conquer this situation. Mm-hmm. And nobody else would, but I'm going to. And any practice I think anybody can find to leverage that sort of mentality versus the victim mentality is always going to be fruitful, always going to be beneficial. Mm-hmm. And any sort of gratitude practice like you talk about, I just think there's no way to have a victim mentality if you're in a state of gratitude. I don't think those two can coexist.
No, because, well, the victim mentality, one of the columns within the foundation of it is, I would say one of the main foundational elements of it is you're on the daily drowning yourself in negativity. You're drowning yourself in this cesspool of woe is me, and everybody should hear that I here am suffering, and so you try to drag other people down, and then that goes down an extremely dark path, as all of us have experienced before. We all of us will have those moments. That's why you build up a healthy foundation, daily rituals and daily habits that are just positive, and that is what will take you into the path of a hero.
Mm-hmm. So diving into the topic tonight, how can we use what you're about to kind of open up for us in following this path?
Following the path, taking on that suffering that we all, your initial reaction to suffering is that you don't want it. You don't want to be suffering. You want to be happy. You want to be settled, and you want to take life and enjoy it. But for, I would say close, almost everybody, you're going to go through large chunks or many small chunks of suffering. It's going to happen. So how can you best prepare yourself to face that? And how can you conquer, and how can you become the hero? And that is an installation of many of practices, which is why I want to break this down into many of episodes, because it's not easy. It's not one or two steps, and it's not easy at all. So with today's topic, and kind of the topic for the series, is adaptation. So adaptation, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the action or process of adapting or being adapted. Real thorough.
Very enlightening.
Yes. But the term in biology, which I think is so much more fruitful for a conversation and more, like you said, enriching, is a change or the process of change that an organism or species engages in to become better suited for its environment.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And that, for me, that is what... So the Oxford one is obviously bone, dry. They need to put a sentence after the word to be put in the dictionary. For the biological term or definition, I truly believe that's more of the kind of the face of adaptation that I at least am a lot more in tune to, and that again is a lot more fruitful for you to be able to be engaged with the term adaptation. So a change or the process of change that an organism or species engages in to become better suited for its environment. So a change or the process of change. So for me, I like the process of change. A plethora of changes is how you have to prepare yourself in knowing that it's gonna take time. There are gonna be many things you're gonna have to change. It's not just one click. It's not just one evening yelling at yourself in the mirror to do something better. You have to instill many different variables over an extended period of time. So for adaptation, I wanted to start off with kind of going into the how. Maybe have the why down the road or sprinkle it in within the episodes, because the why that's obviously the more the philosophical side, a lot more deep rooted in terms of its terminology and the path that you can take for that. But for me, how is kind of the meat and potatoes. That's when I think that that's going to be the most beneficial. But so first off is when you're in the victim mentality, when you're in a rough spot, the one thing that we can all agree on is that your emotions are running wild. Your anxiety may be running high. You are more than likely, if not, we could guarantee that you're going to be in a much more depressive state. You're going to be, running a lot lower on confidence, running a lot lower on, motivation. The engine room doesn't have a whole lot of steam behind it. You're kind of back and forth. Some days are good, some days are not, and we don't have to worry about those too much. But how can we best prepare ourselves to get there? So first, I thought that how can we begin and really kind of put ourselves through the fire at first, jumping into the deep end of the pool, then learn how to swim. May not be the best way for everybody, but this is the best way, at least that I had found myself in facing the challenges that I have faced in the past 2.5 years, is facing your emotions, getting a grip on those emotions. So the first area that I found myself in dealing with was the apprehension of allowing my emotions to run rampant. How can we slow down that ever-revolving carousel of woe is me, this isn't my fault, how could the world allow this to happen, why would the universe allow this to happen, and so on and so forth. So how can you get a grip on that, and how can you slow that down? Well, for me, I would say the first step that really made an impact for that was the meditation. Was sitting down for 15 to 20 minutes a day. It's up to a half hour for me now, but when I first started, it can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes. It can be half an hour if you start off, if you really find yourself into that deep state. But for me, it truly was meditation. Sitting down, closing my eyes, and what I found with that is, and I'm sure this is heavily written about, is that you're shutting off a couple of your senses to really focus on the inside. You become introspective in the act of meditation. And what that allowed me to do was, one, see what emotions I was actually running through, see what emotions were coursing through. And again, it was, depression, anxiety, stress, anger, curiosity that was more of the malintent side than general enthusiastic curiosity. It was definitely the questioning of, why is this happening to me? Why? And I'd gotten a view of all of those, and I decided to tackle them. And I feel that this is what helped best, is I decided to tackle them one at a time. Instead of trying to wrangle up, 10 cattle in the field all at once, you take them one at a time. You go in there and you say, okay, well, let's deal with the anger. How can I deal with the anger? Well, I can lift. I can run. I can engage in physical activities. I found that to be... I had thought that I had already discovered as to why lifting and endurance training had been the solution for my anger, to keep it in control and keep it under wraps. But little did I know that I had not done that successfully, or maybe I've done it successfully before, but it was more of I was finding a new light shining upon the reasons as to why I could use resistance training for dealing with that. And that was something that I found through meditation. Took about 2 weeks that I sat on that. Not every day, but most of the days. I'm not perfect, and I will very much claim to not being perfect. And that was crucial. That was so beneficial. And then just I don't want to go through all of them, but a couple more is another one was especially that I had found myself not wanting to believe that I had any issues with this. And so I had to go through a bit of acceptance with it. And that was brutal, because that was awakening, was anxiety. You have this experience growing up in small town vibes, small town environment. Anxiety is not something that's really talked about. I grew up in a small farm town, a town of about 800 people. And when you're going through school and it's not really, your parents don't talk about it. It's not a topic of discussion because it's not something that people are worried about. People are worried about putting food on the table. People are worried about keeping the house, keeping a roof over your head. Anxiety is not something that is discussed. And so I didn't see myself as somebody who was suffering from that, but I allowed it to be a possibility at first, in knowing that I had dealt with what I had dealt with over the past 2.5 years. And so that was the first step. And then another step of really accepting and grabbing onto it was just being okay with it. Allowing the formidable and unbreakable Austin to have some defects, and come to find that I could use it as a tool for sculpting Austin into something better. And that was monumental for the progress that I'd made in facing that. Was really just acceptance. Because I could accept the anger. That was fine. I already had, like I said, an outlet for it. But accepting the anxiety was extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. I mean, there's some things in the day-to-day life that some people may find difficult about our days that we don't find difficult. But it's stuff like this that this was truly a difficult task for me to complete and for me to take on. And I took it head on. And I feel that was the most beneficial plan of attack for me, was taking it head on and truly allowing myself to be open. Because when you're introspective, you need to really, you need to be aware that being open with yourself and being honest with yourself is something that you may pre-meditation think that you're good at doing, but you're not. I quickly found out that the meditation really there are many of doors there's a series of doors that you continue have to get through to really find yourself in better and better places, and more how could you say, gaining more and more advantages into getting better and better at meditating and being more introspective, is that you have to be open and honest with yourself. And that was a huge step for me in facing my emotions, in facing anxiety, was being honest. Honest that I have anxiety. And yeah, that was huge for me. That was huge. So, yeah, and then lastly, just one more emotion that I really found myself wrestling with for quite some time was the depressive side. I don't have a partner at the moment, and so it's, yes, meditation's nice when you're introspective and you're thinking on the inside and you're looking on the inside, but then when you're with my current form of employment, is the majority of my time, the vast majority of my time is spent alone, either at work or alone in the hotel room. And so it's nice to spend 30 minutes a day thinking about yourself and really digging in, but then there's another 6 to 8 hours outside of work that you're alone and thoughts can run wild, and you have to build upon that. You have to build the discipline to not hear that, to quiet that down, which is something we can move into. But I found that facing that depressive side was also going to be a bit challenging. And so what did I do with that? I attached the resistance training, the physical fitness, especially the dietary and the nutrition side, really came into that as well. I needed to hone back in. I had taken a lot of what do you call that? I wasn't being overly strict with my diet coming out of Houston. Houston, I was on a carnivore, fully carnivore, no cheating, and I was incredibly. I was feeling I was feeling great for what was going on, but I felt fantastic, and then coming out of that, I was still fairly strict. But then as soon as I got back out to work and I was alone again for weeks on time, it really started to hit me hard, and I started to fold in on myself, and I started to cheat myself. That was most certainly a huge step back on the dietary side, on the nutrition side coming out of that. And so that was one big thing that I had to curb, but I was able to take, again, for the depressive side, I was able to take, okay, so what can I do to challenge this with being alone? Is that, 1, resistance training, 2, marathon training, because that's 3-ish hours a day, and for running days can be some, for our longer running days it's even just as much. And then secondly, the nutrition side, fill yourself with good nutritional food, which shouldn't be a shock to everybody, but I love cheesecake and I love croissants. And I don't mind having the occasional latte. Sue me, all right? But being in control of that and not having 2 slices of cheesecake or a couple of croissants, that's where things can get, you need to be a little nitpicky toward yourself to really allow your best person to come out. So I was able to attach those to the depressive emotion and attach to it and to say, okay, I faced it, I heard it, I studied it, and then I was able to formulate my best plan of attack towards it. And so to kind of wrap all that up is no matter what route you take in going introspective, I say meditation has certainly been the best. Journaling has really helped a lot too. I journal right after I meditate. That way I can gather the thoughts that I just had, because my memory is not the best now, especially between addiction and chemo. Memory's gone down the tube. So I write the stuff down, and I try to organize it the best I can. And so whatever route that you can take to finding those moments of introspective work, you need to be able to face those emotions that are running wild. You need to be able to grapple them. You need to be able to get a hold of them, and you need to bring them back down to earth. You need to slow them down, slow that ever-going carousel down, and really, really open up to yourself, really be brutally honest with yourself, you aren't going to be able to procure a whole lot of that inner faith that you can become not necessarily a better person, but a more engaging, more fruitful, more beneficial towards society person within you if you're not just brutally honest. Because it as Jordan Peterson said, it's a paraphrase, is that, you know, you have to be willing to burn that off. You have to set fire those old malevolent or just downright useless parts of yourself that are bringing you down on a constant basis. And one of my favorite quotes from it's from Adam Nergal-Darsky from a song is, "Through fire we walk, with fire in heart." And that I listen to that song almost on the daily, especially if I need something. I always listen to the entire song, which it's a fantastic track. But that keeps me true to the path, is being honest, willing to take on the fire, take on the heat, take on the pressure now. That way there's no heat, there's no pressure that I have to go through later on in terms of that domain, the domain of seeing your emotions run wild and going, okay, let's, all right, now we're here, now we're grounded, and we can move on.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, and I agree and appreciate everything you just said. Where I'd like to start, and perhaps my favorite part, is that biological definition you read of adaptation, about changing yourself to allow yourself to maximally flourish in the environment around you. Mm-hmm. That's literally our message. You face the impossible, you look, analyze, and understand the environment around you. You be impossible. That's the process of the change that Austin talks about. And it's important to put emphasis on that word process rather than like change itself, because there's way too much of this idea out there. And I don't know how we get this or where we get this from, that change is just like an instantaneous thing. Like it's a choice, like it's a decision, and then it's done. And then you just move on. Yeah. And that's not how it is. Like true change that's hard for a person, that's a challenge, that's something they have to work to accept and build, is a constant, daily, ongoing process. It's a devotional practice is what it is. So it's not just an instantaneous, momentous thing. It is something that will continue to go on for the rest of your life. That's the being impossible. That's that building of the impossible version of yourself who can tackle that impossible environment around you. And then ultimately, when those two have been aligned, that's when you do the impossible. But we put far less emphasis on that because we have far less control over that. We know that if we take care of the first two, and particularly the be impossible, that change process, that the rest will eventually take care of itself. Mm-hmm. But that be impossible and the face the impossible, those are so important, that's where you get all of the positivity from. That's where you get the growth, the development, the mindset shift. That's the change in message in your brain. All of the good things come from that. The doing the impossible is just the reinforcement of the message, and the I hate to call it icing on the cake after we just talk about diet, but it's really those moments where, those gratifying moments where you realize that everything you've done, everything you've been practicing and working through, the message you've built in your brain, this process of change you've been working through, that's where it all comes to fruition, and you get to see the true beginning to end completion of the process in real time. So I love that definition because it perfectly reflects our message. Yeah. And then what you break down beyond there is how you analyze your environment. Literally how you face the impossible. Mm-hmm. That's what facing the impossible is. It's looking at the world, at the situation, at the environment around you, whatever it is you're faced with, and making sure you understand it. And one step beyond that, not just that you understand it, but that you're comfortable with it.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that you're not afraid. That doesn't mean that you're not angry. That doesn't mean that you don't have anxiety. That doesn't mean you don't have depression. That just means that you know the situation you're facing so well that you feel comfortable in your own understanding of it. The emotions are something else we work on managing as a separate process, and that's what you laid out very well. Emotions are powerful things, and I would even consider them tools, and they should be felt. But as Austin explained, we have to exhibit a certain level of control and restraint over them. Off camera before this, we were kind of talking about having like a volume knob, like on a speaker system or something like that, and how you could almost have a switcher on it, on the stereo system, that can switch between different channels. You've got your anger, your anxiety, your depression, and for each one, you've got this volume knob that can turn them up and down. Well, what you don't want to do is you don't want to get fired up, get angry, and crank that volume knob up when you're talking to a friend of yours, or, at a restaurant, whatever it may be. There's situations where that emotion can be utilized, can be expressed, can be felt, and can be ultimately worked through and let go in a productive manner. And then there's situations where that does not happen at all. So we have to be able to detach from the situation, be able to take that step back, look at the environment around us, understand what's going on around us, understand what's going on within ourselves, and then use the system to manage these emotions as efficiently and effectively as possible. So you talk about, with anger specifically, you've got your training that is a great vent for that. When you're in the gym, when you're cranking out deadlifts, squats, whatever it is, that's when you can crank that volume knob up on anger, put all of it into that bar. You're not going to hurt the bar's feelings, I promise you. And if you do, we'll just add more weight and it'll hurt your feelings.
And another plate.
Yeah, so
and another.
That is a good environment in which to exhibit that emotion, to work through it, to feel it, and to process it so that you can let it go until the next time you need it. Mm-hmm. And the same thing can be found for any emotion that you deal with. It's not always going to be lifting for everybody. It's not always going to be meditation or journaling for everybody. Everybody needs to find their own process. However, a lot of these tools are very universal. Meditation specifically is just another form of understanding your environment, but it's more of your internal environment rather than your external environment. The internal environment, I think it's shocking how many of us are not even remotely comfortable with that. It's an impossible that so many of us never face. Yeah. And that could end up being an entirely separate discussion. But when you're running from yourself, your own thoughts, your own conscience, that is a state in which you cannot be productive, because you have to understand who you are, what you are, what is going on inside of you. You have to know your own message that you allow through. You have to know your own emotions. You have to be able to understand what is happening within you before you can ever learn to use those emotions, use that message, and use those tools within you to be able to affect that change that will allow you to thrive in the external environment around you. And we probably will go into a whole separate episode in this series discussing just that, more of just the internal environment. But I like how you break that down in that the first step to this whole process is face the impossible. Analyze your environment. Understand what's going on around you, within you, whether it's a change in that environment, whether it's a new environment you've been put in, whether it's a new threat that's popped up in that environment, like a cancer diagnosis that maybe you never expected. Even though you knew it was within the realm of possibility, you never expected it. It was nothing you were ready for. Whatever it is, you have to be able to face that impossible. That is a very crucial step. You have to dive into it, understand it, so that you can know what type of change needs to happen, so that you know the impossible person that you need to work every day to build. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, brother. Was there anything else you had to add on top of all that?
Adding on top of that would be a little bit of a derivation of what you just referred to, and the quieting and the amplifying of certain emotions. But ultimately, I find, and as I hinted to in the anxiety side and dealing with that, is that inner critic within you. And it's something we can dive deep into in the future. But that there are a lot of things that we have discussed previously that stems within that inner critic having a voice, how loud the voice is, and ultimately where that voice even came from. Why for me, why is he there? Why is he so against me gaining insight into how to become a better person? Why is he against me facing the impossible? Why is he against me being impossible? Why is he against me doing the impossible? Where is this coming from? And we've discussed before about the negative mindset today, and before we've talked about the positive messages that you have to deliver to yourself. And for that inner critic, it's important to quiet it down, to bring the dial down a little bit, so you can hear, again, for me, you can hear him better. I can hear the inner Austin. I can understand what he is trying to say. Not all of it is valuable critiques. Some of them, of course, are absolutely petty, and that may happen forever. But that the pettiness has certainly been drawn back heavily, and that mostly is because of the brutal honesty that I've been in practice with, and to being open with what you were facing, because for me, cancer is not great to deal with, and I struggled with not having a purpose before. And then when I was originally diagnosed, and I didn't head over to Salford, I really lost all purpose, and that inner critic got loud real quick, and he got angry. and spiteful. Not afraid to spit fire. But what I've learned over this time, and coming with Impossible Performance especially, is that just let him talk. Let him get that out. Quiet him down. And then listen. Because if I react too soon to an already outlashing voice, then it's just like a conversation with a person. If the two of you are screaming at each other back and forth, there's no solution to be made other than some scratchy vocal cords and probably not a better relationship afterwards. But seeing how freeing it could be to hear him and to be able to move on with him, because the inner critic is going to be honest with you in some cases, because there are things that you don't see at first that you then think about later on, and you go, oh wait, oh, I reacted to this way. Oh, I should have done better this way, or I should have done better that way. I should have said this, or I should have said that. A lot of those should haves, could haves, start sprouting up, and that's a part of the noise that you need to turn down. And ultimately, I find a lot of healing that can come from that. That can come from having a genuine, not conversation with myself, but when I'm in those moments of meditation and I can hear him a bit more clearly, I'm able to be a lot more engaging with him, honest with him, and a lot more beneficial points come out of those talks when you quiet down and you're able to truly listen and kind of weed through what is ridiculous, because you're going to have the occasional reaction of yours is going to be fairly obtuse. It's going to be fairly adverse. It's going to be strange. It's going to be weird. And you're going to think, okay, well, I should have done this. Well, should I maybe have, and you sit there and you think about, okay, well, out of 10 critiques, 4 of them make sense. I find that about half the time it makes sense. Out of the time you're just like, okay, well, hold on. Let's slow down for a moment. And yeah, so I would say that's definitely a necessary step in facing your emotions is realizing that, that inner voice that you have can have some good points, but it's also going to have some very rude, some very incorrect critiques as well, and you have to be willing to be patient with yourself in order to hear those and to really process them, and that was a nice second part to what I found with the facing the emotions.
Yeah, I think it's just understanding that message in your brain, the one that runs constantly all the time. It starts with us detaching, seeing that message from a third-party perspective. So when you think, whether you want to call it the critic or the inner victim or whatever you want to, right, whatever word you want to give to it, a lot of times we can get this negative message in our brain. Even if it's just you go in for a squat workout and you're feeling just awful and you say, I'm just feeling awful, I'm having an off day, it's not going to happen today. Is that the message you allow yourself to accept and believe and internalize? Do you accept that as part of your internal state, as part of your internal environment? Or do you recognize that message when it happens, and do you immediately change it? Do you immediately give yourself another message to accept as your internal state? Again, it's a process. A skill you have to develop, something you have to learn and implement over time. And it's not always instantaneous like that. Sometimes you have deep internal rooted background messages, things about yourself that you've allowed yourself to believe, whether they're limitations, whether they're different victim mindsets, whether they're positive mindsets, whatever they may be. We've all got different things that we believe, have allowed ourselves to internalize, that we believe about ourselves. Sometimes those, if they're things that need changed, they take some unraveling to work through those, to undo those, and to build back anew. But there's a guy online, and this is a little bit of a different internal messaging system. There's a guy online that we pull a lot of insight from. He says he calls conscience, human conscience, the authentic voice of God. And whether you believe that it's God or you believe that it's universal law, whatever you want to call it, your conscience doesn't often stray. A lot of times that part of our internal system knows better than we do what path we ought to be chasing. So we'll do a whole separate episode to break down this internal state, mapping this out, how you can work through this, how you can analyze it, how you can execute to change it where there might be changes that need made, and how you can implement it on a daily basis to build that impossible person that we're all chasing. But for today, when faced with the impossible, be impossible, and you will certainly do the impossible. When put in an environment that you don't thrive in, that you don't understand, you must effect change in order to become something and someone that will flourish in that environment. That's the definition of adaptation. That's everything we are about at Impossible Performance, and that's everything we want you guys to achieve in your own lives. So, with that, if you guys want to hear more about this message, everything we're doing, everything we're chasing in life, find everything we do at www.impossibleperformance.com. We are also active on every single social media platform. You can find us on there. Links will be in the bio, but on Instagram and TikTok, I am at impossible.performance. Austin, brother, where can they find you?
Austin_strength.
Yes, sir. Austin's been posting some more content too recently, and I love it. I'm going to shamelessly plug that. I just love that you have a much more refined perspective, I would say, than I do.
Perspective
of just everything.
Okay.
Like, I tend to be very like hard hitting, like banging on the door, like just like black and white kind of, this is just how it is all the time. And you tend to put things in a lot more refined, nuanced way that I always appreciate when I see it and when I hear it. And I think it's very valuable to our listeners because everything has almost unlimited nuance to it.
Precisely.
When you look at it in day-to-day life. For me, kind of the black and white mentality is almost an adaptation that I've built to allow me to be more effective in life, because if I leave myself any room for nuance, I will fail. That's just like, that's how my brain works. If I say like, oh, I don't really need to do that training session today, like I could just do it's just like I'm doing this training today, I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it. That doesn't mean that I don't adjust things to the situation on a day-to-day basis, as far as what we need to meet the ultimate goal. But I have to be pretty black and white with my approach to things. So I appreciate the refined, kind of nuanced perspective. You guys should definitely check out more of what he's been putting out with his own perspective on this message. And if you guys want to see new stuff on the podcast, if there's particular guests you want to see, things that you like, things that you dislike, please leave us a comment. We read and respond to all of them ourselves. We love hearing from you guys, because ultimately this is our message for you. We want you to be able to implement this into your life, because we know that it has changed our lives, and we believe that it has the power to do that in every single person's life. So if there's things you guys love about what you're doing, or things you want to see more of, let us know. We'll make it happen. Also, as we always ask, the number one thing we ask, if this message has meant something to you, or if you know someone you think it could help, please share it with someone else. That's how we grow. That's how we spread this message. And that's how we affect change in more people's lives, which at the end of the day is the core root of our mission. We also have apparel available online, the tank I'm wearing, the shirt Austin's wearing. You guys can pick any of these up. We are very particular about the brands we use, the brands we wear, everything we use on a day-to-day basis. If anybody knows me at Austin, you know that we are very particular. So everything we have apparel-wise is the highest quality. It won't shrink. It won't get stiff and dry in the washer. It stays super soft, very vibrant in color, and it's very top of the line stuff. So we always want to make sure we're providing that to you guys in everything that we do, whether it's our message, our apparel, our podcast, our media, whatever it is. We always try to put out the very best thing possible that we can. So go online, check that out. You can find our storefront through www.impossibleperformance.com. And we also want to give a brief shout out to King and Fifth Hat Company. We've been working with these guys for a very long time. Austin is not wearing one right now.
I know. Oh. My head got really hot today, so...
Yeah, we had to do some adapting today. We are very white individuals from Northern Europe heritage. We don't handle the sun very well, so you could say. So Austin...
Got a lot of it today.
Yeah. We both got affected in different areas. Austin's head is not doing so great right now, so as a means of not perpetuating the inflamed area, he's had to pass on the hat tonight. But
yes,
King and Fifth is a phenomenal company. They're phenomenal people, and they really have changed the game of headwear. I love these companies that come in and they say, what's something that's existed for a century and we can come in and revolutionize it and make it better. They have done that with headwear. Literally, they have hats for the smallest of heads. So when people who have small heads, when they have hats that are too tall for them, or their head gets swimming in a hat, they have hats for you. If you have a very large head and you're used to being on the very last button of a hat, they have a hat for you. You can see I'm actually wearing the medium size, the large, extra large, and I am only 2 clicks in from being fully snapped. I generally have a pretty big head, and the fact that they have a size even bigger than this tells me that no matter who you are, they have a hat for you.
Absolutely.
They perform great in the gym. They are amazing at sweat absorption and sweat wicking. We believe in this brand so much that we are hooking our entire team up with hats from King and Fifth. They were generous enough to reach out to us. They believe in what we're doing to help bring children's champions to the Columbus Marathon. They're hooking up every one of our team members with a neon last rep hat. Mm-hmm. The hat that you guys saw me wear in the marathon last year, every member of Team Impossible will be wearing this year, because they are such a generous company who believes so much in what we do. And beyond that, they have hats for casual and formal wear as well that we wear to all of our speaking gigs, all of our events, and everything we do.
The Senna shout out.
Oh,
my favorite hat.
It's a great hat.
It's fantastic.
It's super comfortable. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's like versatile, like you could wear it out for a concert or a night out with your friends, but we also wear it to formal speaking events, and it just fits in perfectly to every occasion. So go out and check out what they've got at kingandfifth.com and use our code Impossible Performance at checkout, save you guys a little bit of money. Mm-hmm. outside of that, guys, thank you for everything you do to help spread this message. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for being impossible in your own lives, because everything we are striving to do at Impossible Performance is build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening, and as always, be impossible.